Hey y'all, it's Miss Flores. So today we're going to be talking about factors and divisibility and how they're kind of related. So yesterday we were discussing visibility and learning about our rules of divisibility, right? So we were learning about, how to figure out if a number is divisible by 2, 3, 5, 6, 9, and 10. Well, now we're going to learn about factors, and we're going to talk a little bit about how they're related. So first off, let's talk about factors. Well, what is a factor? Well, a factor is a number multiplied by another number to find a product. So anytime you're dealing with multiplication problems, like let's say I have 2 times 3 is equal to 6. The numbers that I'm multiplying, so in that case it would be 2 and 3, those are factors of 6. So numbers that multiply to get another number, to get your answer, your product, are going to be factors. So how do we find out what our factors for our number are? Let's say I'm trying to find the factors of 32. So what I can do is I can create what's called a T-chart. So a T-chart looks like a capital T, and I'm talking about 32. So I'm wanting to find my factors of 32. So when I'm talking about my factors of 32, I'm trying to figure out what times what is 32 and figure out all the ways to multiply to get 32. Well, first off, every number times 1 times, I'm just all tongue-tied. 1 times a number is always going to be the same number, right? So 1 times 32 is going to give me 32, right? So I'm going to list all the ways to make 32 through a multiplication problem. So 32 is even, right? So that means 2 times something is 32. If I were to divide 2 by 32 over on the side, I would get 16. 2 times 16 is 32. Well, let's see. What about 3? Is 3 times something 32? So now this is where I can use my divisibility rules to figure out if a number, if in this case 3, if 3 times something is 32, right? In order for 3 times something to be 32 divided by something has to be 3, right? So let's see if 32 can even be divided by 3. So my rule for 3 is that if I add my digits, in this case it'd be 3 and 2, and whatever their sum was, in this case it's 5, if that is a multiple of 3, then 32 is divisible by 3, right? Well, 5 is not a multiple of 3. 3, if I count my multiples of 3, 6, 9, right? 5 isn't on there. So that means 3 times something is not 32. So 3 is not on there. What about 4? If I think about my math facts, I know that 4 times 8 is 32, right? Now, what about 5? So remember, think about your divisibility rules. In order for a number to be divisible by 5, it's got to end in a 5 or a 0. Well, 32 ends in a 2, right? So it's not divisible by 5. What about 6? So in order for a number to be divisible by 6, it has to meet the rules for being divisible by 2 and 3. Well, remember when we did 3? 32 wasn't divisible by 3, so it's not going to be divisible by 6. So what about 7? If I think about my multiples of 7, I have 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. So 32 is not on there. So 7 times something isn't 32. So these are all of my factors for 32. So if I were to list them out, my factors for 32 would be 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. So in order to figure this out, I kind of also had to think about my math facts. So what I do when I'm creating my T-charts is I start off with 1 and go down and until they meet each other. So in this case, I started with, was 1 times something 32, 2 times something is 32. 3 times something wasn't 32, 4 times 8 was 32. Well, then 5 times something wasn't 32, 6 times something wasn't 32, 7 times something wasn't 32, and then I come back to 8, right? Well, once I come back to 8, I know 8 times 4 is 32, so then I know that I am done with all of my numbers because they kind of met. They met together. So these would be all of my factors of 32. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and 32. Let's look at the next one. Now let's talk about our factors of 56. Same kind of thing. I'm going to create my t-chart. Well, it's a gimme. 1 times 56 is 56, right? 1 times any number is going to stay the same. So 1 times 56 is 56. Let's think about 2, right? In order for a number to be divisible by 2, so in order for it to have a factor of 2, basically, it needs to end in an even number. So that would be 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. Well, 56 ends in a 6, so this would be an even number, which would be 2. In order to figure out 2 times what is 56, I would have to do 56 divided by 2. So if I did that on the side, 56 divided by 2. I end up with 28. So since 56 divided by 2 is 28, that means 2 times 28 is 56. So when we're dealing with factors and divisibility, they go hand in hand, right? We're just basically, opposite operations. So 2 times 28 was 56. What about 3? In order for a number to be divisible by 3, its digits need to add up to be a multiple of 3. So let's add up our digits. I've got 5 plus 6. Well, 5 plus 6 is 11. Is 11 a multiple of 3? Well, let's skip count. 3, 6, 9, 12. I don't run into 11. So 3 times something is not going to give me 56. What about 4? Let's think about it. Well, there aren't really any rules for 4, but what I could do is I could just try to divide 56 by 4 and see if I get an even number, no remainders, right? Because in order for a number to be divisible by another number, it has to go in entirely, right? I have no remainders. So 4 goes into 5 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. I get 1. 4 times 16 is 4. And what do you know? It goes in evenly. I don't have any remainders. So when I have 4 times 14 is 56. Right? That's what we just did on our division. So now let's think about 5. In order for a number to be divisible by 5, it has to have a 5 or a 0 in the ones place. 56 has a 6, so that's not going to be divisible by 5. What about 6? Remember, our rules for 6. In order for a number to be divisible by 6, it has to be divisible by 2 and 3. Well, it wasn't divisible by 3, so that means 6 times something is not 56. Let's think about 7. Well, if I think about my multiples of 7, I have, and you can use a multiplication chart to come up with these multiples too, right? Well, 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, right? So 7 times, when I look at that, that would be 7 times 8 is 56, right? Well, now, if I would go on to my next number, because I've already tried 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, my next number would be 8. But you see, 8 is on this side. So that means we are done. We've come up with all the factors of 56. So all my factors of 56 would be 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 14, 28, and 56. Those would be all of my factors. And some of your factors you might not necessarily know. Like, I don't know if we all know our multiples of 4, right? So when we're double checking, it is totally fine just to do your work on the side a little bit in order to see if a number times something gives you 56 in this case. Let's try another one. Now, what are the factors of 64? So let's make another T-chart, right? So we'll do 64, make my big T. All right, so remember, 1 times a number is always going to say itself, right? So 1 times 64 is always guaranteed going to be a factor, right? 1 is always going to be a factor of a number. So now, let's think about 2. In order for a number to be divisible by 2, it has to end in an even number. So 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. 64 ends in a 4, so that does make it an even number, which means it is divisible by 2. If you don't know what 2 times what is 64 off the top of your head, which is totally fine, you can do your division over on the side, right? No harm in that. And I get 32. So that means 2 times 32 is 64. So 2 and 32 are both factors of 64. Now let's try 3. Remember, for 3, I need to take my digits, so that'd be 6 plus 4, add them together, and see if I get a multiple of 3. So I get 10 as my digit sum, right? So is 10 a multiple of 3? Let's skip count. 3, 6, 9, 12. 10 is not on that list, right? 10 is not a multiple of 3. So 64 is not divisible by 3. Let's try 4, right? There's no real rule for 4. So you kind of have to think about, just doing that division to see if 4 times something is 64. Remember, if I get a remainder, then it is not divisible, right? I want it to go in a whole number of times. And what do you know? 4 times 16 ended up being 64. So 4 times 16 is 64. Now let's try 5. Well, in order for a number to be divisible by 5, it has to end in a 5 or a 0. 64 ends in a 4, so it's not going to be divisible by 5, right? So let's think about 6. Well, in order for a number to be divisible by 6, it has to be divisible by 2 and 3. Well, it was divisible by 2, but it wasn't divisible by 3, right? So it's not divisible by 6. Let's think about 7. So let's think about 7. If you can skip count high enough to 64 by 7, so you can totally do that, or you can just do your division over on the side. Either way is totally fine, right? Well, it turns out that honestly skip counting would have been better because I would still have to do that. Well, let's think about it. 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, 63. 63, right? So 63 is going to be my multiple of 7, not 64. So if I were to try to do this, well, 7 times 9 is 64, right? I'm sorry, 63. So I subtract and I get 1. Since I have a remainder, it's not going to be divisible by 7, right? So 7 times a whole number is not going to give me 64. Let's think about 8. Well, if I were to skip count by 8, that's going to be 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, right? If I were to look at a multiplication chart, I could see that 8 times 8 is 64. Well, if you notice, I had 8 on both sides. So anytime you end up with a number where it's times itself on your T-chart, that's how you know that you're going to stop, right? When you run into the same number on this other side, that's how you know that you've exhausted all of your factors. So my factors for 64 would be 1, 2, 4, 8. I don't have to write 8 twice because I just know 8 in itself is a factor. 8, 16, 32, 64. Those are my factors of 64 when I exhausted all of my other options. Let's try another one. All right, factors of 18. So make your T-chart. 18. Remember, 1 times whatever number you're dealing with is automatically going to be their factors, right? Because 1 times 18 is 18. So now, let's think about 2. In order for a number to be divisible by 2, it has to be an even number. 18 is an even number, right? Because it ends in an 8. So 2 times, and this is a math fact, 2 times what is 18? 2 times 9 is 18. So 2 and 9 are both factors of 18. Now let's think about 3. In order for a number to be divisible by 3, its digits need to add up to 3. You might know if 18 is divisible by 3 based on math facts, but if you're having forgetting, you can just add up the digits, right? Well, 1 plus 8 is 9. 9 is a multiple of 3, right? So 18 is going to be divisible by 3. Well, 3 times what is 18? 3 times 6 is 18. Now let's think about 4. If I skip count by 4, do I run into 18? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Not quite. So 4 times something is not going to give me 18. What about 5? In order for a number to be divisible by 5, it has to end in a 5 or a 0. Well, 18 ends in 8, so it's not going to be divisible by 5. Our next number would be 6, but 6 is on this side, so we know that we are done. We've exhausted all of our factors, because you will never have a factor that continues up on the other side past 18, because 1 and 18 are your extremes. 1 is the smallest factor you can have. 18 is the largest factor that you can have. So once they meet, once I start seeing the same numbers again, then I know I'm done. So my factors for 18 would be 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18. Those would be all of my factors for 18. Now, let's look at the next one. This is our last T-chart one. What are the factors of 45? So let's make our T-chart for 45. So remember, 1 times whatever number you're dealing with is going to be automatically your first factors, right? 1 times 45 is 45. So now let's think about 2. In order for a number to be divisible by 2, it has to be even. So it has to end in a 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. 45 ends in a 5, so that's an odd number. It cannot be divided by 2. So let's try 3. In order for a number to be divisible by 3, its digits have to add up to be a multiple of 3, right? So let's do 4 plus 5. 4 plus 5 is 9, so its digit sum is 9. Is 9 a multiple of 3? If I skip count by 3, I get 3, 6, 9. So it is a multiple of 3, right? So that means 45 is divisible by 3. So 3 times what is 45? You could do the division on the side to figure it out if you don't know it. I know, though, that 3 times 15 is 45. Let's try 4. For whatever reason, 4 is kind of like a multiple that we don't necessarily think about a whole lot. So you could do your division on the side if you want, or use a multiplication chart. I get a remainder, right? So that means 4 times something is not going to give me 45 exactly. We want numbers that are going evenly entirely when we're dividing, right? So 4 times something is not 45. What about 5? Well, in order for a number to be divisible by 5, it has to end in a 5 or a 0. 45 ends in a 5, right? So that means 5 times something is 45. 5 times what is 45? 5 times 9 is 45. What about 6? For a number to be divisible by 6, it has to be divisible by 2 and 3. Well, 45 wasn't even, so it wasn't divisible by 2, so it's not going to be divisible by 6. What about 7? Let's think about our multiples of 7 for a second. So remember, when we skip count by 7, that is 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49. 45 is not on that list, right? So it's not divisible by 7. What about 8? Let's think about our multiples of 8. Well, 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48. So it's not on that list of 8 either. So my next number would be 9. 9 is already right here, though. So that's how I know that I am done. I've made full circle. So those are all of my factors for 45. So my factors for 45 would be 1, 3, 5, 9, 15, and 45. So those are T-charts. Let's look at our next question. We got 2 multiple choice questions before we move on to today's assignment. All right, which number is divisible by 2, 3, and 6? So we've got 2 options of solving this, right? If I'm trying to figure out what number is divisible by 2, 3, and 6, I'm also trying to think of what numbers have factors of 2, 3, and 6. So 2 times something gets me a number, 3 times something gets me a number, 6 times something gives me a number. So we have an option of either doing T-charts, or we can just see if it matches all the rules, right? So I'd say let's think about if these numbers match all the rules for 2, 3, and 6. Let's think about 2. So the rule for 2 is that my number has to be even, right? It has to end in a 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0, right? Well, let's start thinking about what numbers aren't even. 60 ends in a 0, so it's even. 46 ends in a 6, so it's even. 33 and 21 are both odd numbers, so they're not going to be divisible by 2. So that automatically gets rid of B and gets rid of D. So now let's think about our rule for 3. So remember, our rule for 2 was it just has to be even, so that gives us A and C as options. So now let's look at 3. In order for a number to be divisible by 3, I have to add up my digits, right? And that has to give me a multiple of 3. So let's look at A. If I add up my digits, I'll get 6 plus 0. 6 plus 0 is 6. Now 46, I have to add up my digits. So I have 4 plus 6, which gives me 10. So my our digit sums are 6 and 10, right? Well, if I skip count by 3, 3, 6, 9, 12, right? So 6 is a multiple of 3. 10, 3, 6, 9, 12 is not going to give me a multiple of 3. So that gets rid of C. So now 60 was a number that was divisible by 2. And we just checked and it was divisible by 3. So remember, if it's divisible by 2 and 3, that automatically makes it divisible by 6. So my answer is A. Now, let's look at our last question before we look at our assignment today. All right, so it says a package of marbles contains 20 marbles, 38 marbles, 48 green marbles, and 16 yellow marbles. Which color marbles can be divided evenly between 6 people? All right, so we need to think about our numbers. Our numbers were 20 blue marbles. So I'm going to write them in their colors. So we had 20 blue marbles. We had 38 red marbles. We had 48 green marbles. And then we had 16 yellow marbles. So those were all of our numbers and their colors. So if we want to know which color marbles can be divided evenly between 6 people, we're wanting to know what numbers can be evenly divided by 6. So we've got a few ways that we can figure this out, right? We could either do a T-chart, we could think about divisibility rules, or we could just straight up divide or skip count by 6. So let's see. Let's just divide. How about that? So let's do 20 divided by 6. Well, 6 doesn't go into 2, but it can go into 20 3 times. 3 times 6 is 18. I subtract and I get 2. Well, that's not even, right? We don't want remainders, so 20 is not my answer. Well, let's try 38. So I'll do 38 divided by 6. 6 goes into 38 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36. I subtract and I get 2. Well, that's not even, right? We don't want remainders. Let's try 48. So we'll do 48 divided by 6. 6 goes into 48 8 times. 8 times 6 is 48. What do you know? That goes in evenly. So let's keep an eye out on 48. But let's just check 16 to make sure. Well, 6 goes into 16 2 times. 2 times 6 is 12. I subtract and I get 4. That's not even. So my 48 green marbles would be the marbles that can be evenly divided by 6 people. So green marbles is my answer. All right, y'all. So let's look at today's assignment. So we're going to have some factor questions. There's also going to be some divisibility questions. So first, let's look at our first slide. Okay, so starting on every single assignment, whether it's a Google form or it's a Google Slides, whatever we're doing, you're now going to see a question that says, what is the secret code in the video lesson? So our video lessons are going to start having secret codes, so that way I make sure that you are watching the video lesson and you will only know the secret code from watching the video lesson, right? So that's our entire video. So our secret code for this video is going to be ghosts. 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 S. GHOSTS. You know, like spooky ghosts, like Halloween. So that is going to be your secret code. So you're going to, wrong thing. So you're going to type ghosts, 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 right there, right? So that is what you're going to do anytime you see secret code for the video lesson, right? And your code is going to change every single day. So today's was ghosts, GHOSTS. All right, so let's talk about factors. All right, so remember, we were just talking about factors. So what are factors? The numbers you multiply to get a product. So for 20, if I were to make a t-chart for 20, the factors of 20 would be 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. Because all those numbers times something are 20. But that also means that 20 is divisible by those factors. So 20 can also be divided by 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. So let's look at our first questions. So we're going to list all the factors of 24 and 39. And you're going to need to make a t-chart to do this, right? So what you're going to do is you're basically going to come up with your multiplication problems. However many multiplication problems you see, so in this case I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to have 4 multiplication problems that get me to 24. For 39, I'm going to have 2 multiplication problems that get me to 39. So 24 is going to be 1 times 24 is equal to 24, right? That's always going to be our first factors. 1 times whatever number you're dealing with. So 1 times 24 is 24. So if I were to make a t-chart, my next number that I would think about would be 2, right? Well, 24 is even, so I know 2 times something is 24. If I think about my math facts, I know that 2 times 12 is equal to 24, right? 2 times 12 is equal to 24. So now let's think about 3. In order to see if a number is divisible by 3, you can add up our digits, so that would be 2 plus 4. Well, 2 plus 4 is 6, so I know 24 is divisible by 3 because 6 is a multiple of 3. Also, these numbers are math fact numbers, right? 3 times 8 is 24. So that would be another problem. And so now we did 3, so let's think about 4. Well, 4 times 6 is 24, right? 4 times 6 is 24. And then I'm out of space, so I know that I'm done. But if you were to go one more step and you would think about your next number as 5, well, 5, in order for a number to be divisible by 5, it has to end in a 5, right? 24 doesn't end in a 5. So my next number would be 6. 6 is right here, so I know I am done. So my factors would be 1 and 24, because 1 times 24 was 24. 2 times 12. 3 times 8. Then 4 times 6. So my factors of 24 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, 24. So let's try 39. Remember, our first one is always going to be 1 times whatever number we're dealing with. In this case, it's 39. 1 times 39 is 39. So now, let's think about 2. 2 would be my next number, right? Well, 39 is not even. It doesn't end in a 2, 4, 6, 8, or 0. So I cannot divide it by 2. Let's think about 3. In order to see if a number is divisible by 3, I need to add up my digits. So in this case, that would be 3 plus, that's supposed to be a plus 9. Well, 3 plus 9 is equal to 12. Well, isn't 12 a multiple of 3, right? So, right, 3, 6, 9, 12. So that means 3 times something is 39. If I were to do that on a separate sheet of paper, I would come up with 3 times 13 was equal to 39. So my table is done. I've got my 2 multiplication problems. So now my factors are going to be 1 and 39, because 1 times 39 was 39. And then my other factors are going to be 3 times 13. So those are my factors of 39. let's look at slide 7. So slide 7 just asks, is 5 a factor of the number, right? Yes or no? And you need to use your divisibility rules for this. Remember, in order for something to be a factor, that means it also can be divided by that number, right? Because multiplying and division go hand in hand. They're just opposite operations. So for 5 to be a factor of these numbers, that means 5 times something had to get me these numbers, right? So in order for it to be a factor of 27, 30, 36, right, that means our last digit, our number in the ones, needs to be a 5 or a 0. So 27, does 27 end in a 5 or a 0? No, right? So it says just write yes or no, so I would just say no, right? What about 30? Does 30 end in a 5 or a 0? 30 ends in a 0, so yes, it would have 5 as a factor, right? 5 times 6 is 30. So 5 is a factor of 30. So those are the type of questions that you can see. You will have a few multiple choice questions. If you have a multiple choice question, what you can do is you can either put in a text box. So to put in a text box, you're just going to click the text box tool and you can drag it, right? And that creates a text box that you can write in. You can type your answer that way. Or if you didn't want to do that, you could always look up the shape tool. You can go shapes, click the circle, and you can just, let's say I said A was the right answer. You can just draw a circle over A and boom, you colored it in, right? Either way, however you want to fill in your answers for your multiple choice questions. So you've got 1, 2, 3. We already did 2 on slide 7. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 questions on your own, and that is it. Make sure to put the secret code that I already said what it was. I said it at the very beginning of this section when we were going over our assignment. Make sure you type your secret code in there, and we will go over these questions later on at our second meeting. Let me know if y'all need anything, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye, everybody.